Hey guys, new video here. Finally got around to making a guide for Trent 12. This is 100% usable for those of you who still need to kill Trent 11 as well. I'm going to follow slightly different format in this video. I'll open up with two keys that I've identified that I think you guys should focus on in order to beat this boss. Next, we'll look at some team building options and we will wrap up with some optimization tips. Once again, I am going to avoid a build the specific team format. One of the biggest complaints that I receive about Trent 12 is that people don't have Karu yet. The good news is that you don't need her. She is top tier, but she is replaceable. I want you to be able to build a team based off of your Elune box and the progression path that you took to get here. There are really only two keys that I want you to focus on for Trent. First is how to deal with the ads, specifically in phase 2. And second is how to survive the high damage output of this fight. So killing Aconin is actually more important than your damage on the boss. If you can find a way to deal with both Aconin in phase 2 using your setup, you can always edge out a kill regardless of your damage on the boss, or if you have low self-destruct phase damage. The boss will slowly melt. Even if the boss keeps summoning green mushrooms, eventually he will die if you deal with the Aconin. Whenever you figure this out, further optimization just leads to quicker kills. The other condition that we will need to focus on is surviving the high damage output of the ads and the boss. You do want around 124 to 130 speed Elunes on your team, so there is a slight threshold here. Higher is always better, but I'm recommending this as a starting point for even attempting Trent 12. This will vary depending on your zodiac progression, but the key is that your team needs to be able to move before the boss takes a turn after summoning his ads in phase 2. If you can't do this, you will just struggle too much to kill ads. Next, use HP and physical defense substats on your gear wherever possible. There's only one mechanic on this fight that does magic damage, and all the rest of the damage is actually physical. So let's begin with some basic team building, keeping those two keys in mind. There are team comps outside of this graphic that can kill Trent 12, but I made this template as a formula for you to follow with options available to most players. Building those off-label teams can be done, but require more effort and too much explanation for this video. So we're just going to start off by bringing Weiwei, because of all that she brings to our team, and we aren't punished at all by mechanics for bringing her. Next, you want to consider a crit buff. With the introduction of cards to the game, a lot more players started knocking down Trent 12. She brings a 40% crit rate buff before skill gems, up to 50% crit damage increases for the team, an attack buff and team attack in her S3, supplemental healing, and she removes a debuff on each turn that she takes. If you have her, use her. It will save you a lot of time and effort. But if not, just use Miho instead. Miho brings offensive and defensive utility by buffing crit rate and evasion rate based off of her current attack power, so she syncs very well with Kartia and Weiwei. She generates souls using her S3, and you can use her for her S2 for additional turns and an accuracy buff. She also has additional soul generation if using the Corrupt 3 set. But if you're using Kartia together with Miho, just don't use Miho's S2, because you will end up burning Kartia's attack buff too fast, causing you to lose that crit rate buff for your entire team, which is the whole reason we're even bringing her. Next, I urge you to strongly consider these steroid buffers, because with or without strong gear, they provide access to stats you normally wouldn't obtain with your gear. Kartia brings that big attack power buff, and Ahanys is a rare, very obtainable unit that brings an HP buff to help with that survivability portion of the fight. She also deals significant physical damage by attacking when her teammates deal a critical hit, which you are about to hear me mention quite a bit. Finally, fill out your last spots with enough damage to kill both Aconin in phase 2, satisfying that first key that we discussed. You're going to see a lot of people utilizing physical damage users because Trent has much lower physical defense than he does magical defense. Arslan, with his recent rework, is now top tier for the spot. He has the ability to one-shot Aconin at full health, with or without Kartia Steroid, utilizing that built-in crit rate and crit power increase, making him really strong at the moment. In addition, anyone with built-in crit rate increases sync very well with Ahanys for that extra damage output. For Arslan teams without Kartia, you may probably consider Lillith to supplement his damage, or a weakened physical defense from someone like Seraphine, allowing him to ignore defense. Chloe is S tier as well, due to her high damage scaling on her S2, which is even usable with 0 souls, so you don't even fall short on damage when running out of souls. She also has that built-in crit rate mechanic, which by phase 2 will give her enough crit rate to help you with one-shotting the Aconin, as well as once again syncing well with Ahanys. This ability comes in very handy, and Chloe can save her single target nuke S3 to do damage to the boss while he's in his self-destruct phase, since her spammable S2 can one-shot those adds. If you are using her, consider using BJ in this instance instead of Full Moon, since her debuffs are not important here. Seraphine has an attack scaling physical defense break that can reduce the boss's physical defense to 0 at only around 30,000 attack power. This allows her and other physical damage dealers to ignore the boss's defense. In addition, her counter crit passive will proc additional Ahanys attacks, as well as scaling her own damage output. She can also refresh weaken effects. Next, we have some Elunes that are very capable options. Lillith is able to bring a male damage dealer with her, increasing the damage that they do, soul generation if they're in the backline and iron wall, as well as additional Ahanys attacks from additional crit hits. She also brings a weakened max health debuff, which ignores the 50% damage reduction on the Aconin from the boss's passive, while also reducing the HP needed to land a kill on the shroom, which can come very handy in phase 2. For this reason, I would recommend using Full Moon on Lillith. Baldr, although currently outclassed by Arslan, is still viable with his unique kit, utilizing both decent AoE and a single target nuke. The Blaze is small damage, but it does increase his damage output here due to his passives. Lastly, I do have some Elunes listed here that may work for you. Sid Reiner has been utilized together with Lillith, Ahanys, and Miho. This may need some optimization, but it is doable because his S3 will scale off of his physical defense, scaling his attack power high enough to be able to kill those shrooms. If you need help with this, search for Winchell, Winchell, in the official Elune Discord for his discussion on how to set this up if you have a Sid Reiner build. Bope, one of my guildmates in Leviathan and one of the top players on the server, got early kills using Eris and a Mikazuki setup. We don't use this anymore due to the more optimal setups, but if you have invested in these Elunes in your progression, I have included them here for your consideration. I've also included 2 more defense breakers and Reve, who suffers from her magical damage output, but because of her synergy with Baldr and her high AoE damage kit, she may be worth consideration for dealing with the shrooms. One of the most frequently asked questions that I receive is, why is phase 2 so hard? Or, is my phase 2 glitched? Why is he summoning so many mushrooms? So let's quick break down the attack order. Just count how many turns the boss is taking in order to follow along and then know what to expect next. On his first turn, he will summon adds and attack a single target. On his second turn, he will use an AoE attack. And then on his third turn, he will attempt to absorb any remaining mushrooms. He will repeat this rotation over and over. Whenever he is attempting to summon more mushrooms, if there are any still remaining, he will absorb them. Just before any absorption, mushrooms will strip your team's buff using their Spore Explosion. Then, in phase 2, when the boss is below 60% HP, he will now summon an additional wave of Aconin on that second turn in the rotation. This leaves you with only 1 boss turn to deal with each set of adds. Finally, if the boss goes into his third turn in the rotation without any shrooms remaining, he will self-destruct and take more damage. This will let you bypass his 50% damage reduction by giving you 100% more damage. This allows you to deal some decent damage to the boss. Next, let's talk about which Aconin you should target. Consider which buffs are available from killing Aconin, and then use them to help kill remaining or upcoming Aconin, deal additional boss damage while he's in self-destruct phase, or improve your cooldown management. Also, determine what kind of damage your Elune is doing. Maximize your damage output by attacking the Aconin that is more vulnerable to your school of damage. In terms of most physical damage taken, you would first target the Nimble, then Fiery, then Heavy, and Sturdy last. In terms of most magic damage taken, you would first target Nimble, then Sturdy, then Fiery and Heavy both take the least magic damage. Use this together with the buffs gained to help plan and prioritize your damage. Next, we can talk about damaging the boss when it matters. First, be very careful about transitioning the boss below 60% HP. Make sure that both Aconin are dead, or they will explode and wipe your buffs as he goes to summon more adds as that phase 2 begins. Some players may want to try to damage the boss as far below 60% as they can while transitioning into that phase 2. To do this, utilize his increased damage taken self-destruct phase together with a big single target nuke. But don't forget that first key that we talked about. Killing a Aconin is way more important than your damage on the boss. Newer players may need those big damage S3s to deal with both Aconin, rather than spending them on boss damage. Prioritize killing a Aconin in phase 2, then learn how to squeeze in damage on the boss, without forsaking the adds or losing your defensive buffs. While this may take a lot of effort in the beginning, it can grant you access to those level 80 to 85 weapons that will make future attempts take less effort. Also, take inventory of your cooldowns, soul costs, and know your damage capabilities, including deciding which Aconin to kill, as we just discussed. Heaviness is a great example here. If you have the damage to burn through the heavy Aconin, you may be able to use a cooldown on the remaining mushroom, and then have that S3 back up in time to help you kill the next wave of shrooms. But if you didn't pay attention to the 19,000 magic defense, your Chloe may not land that kill. Your original intent in targeting the blue buff was to improve your cooldown use, but now you would have to burn your turn swap and cooldowns to catch up. Similar situations may happen when planning to use a 6 soul S3 for damage, but not having enough souls when that Elune takes a turn. Know and utilize your soul spending and generation optimally together with those Aconin buffs. Finally, we can talk about some optimization on that second key that we opened with. How to survive the massive damage output of this boss. The mushrooms on this fight are very fast, and often they will take 2 turns when summoned, depending on your speed. Since this speed is nearly unobtainable, use defensive buffs prior to them being summoned to survive this damage. On your opening turn, this is particularly important to organize, since you have much less souls to work with. I highly suggest investing some time into speed tuning your team to attack in the right order to help you survive here. It is worth your time to set up because of granting you access to those weapons if you can land a kill using this method. Iron Wall with a Weiwei setup gives you up to 3 4 soul abilities in the opening turn to help you prepare for that very fast incoming damage. This is 12 souls in your opening turn compared to the usual 5 to 6. Use one of the turn orders I have listed here to pull this off. Beyond the opening turn, remember to maintain your defensive buffs when adds are about to be summoned again, and kill adds so you don't lose the buffs. Utilize physical defense helms and boots instead of magical defense, since we discussed the damage on this fight is largely physical. Transcend Weiwei or give her HP stats to increase the physical defense buff from her bubble tea. You can also consider using physical defense or HP buff Elunes. When Nimble spawns, be careful with your turn swap. You might kill your own Elune by swapping into them with low HP. I think this might be all that you need to know and able to put together a team for Trent 12. Now that they've fixed the bugs on the fight, I will start uploading some example kill videos on how to pull those off, so keep an eye out for those. Other than that, thanks for tuning in and much aloha.